What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast. I am Kyle Nabors, back here along with my co-host Sean Hammond. Sean, man, you were traveling back from Tampa this morning, so we pushed the usual 9:30 podcast live stream back to 1 p.m. today, and I thought maybe that it would help me get a little more perspective, calm down a little bit. But I'm not gonna lie, it's now about 24, a little less than 24 hours since that game ended yesterday, and I'm still irritated. And from the look of the chat already starting to roll in, and from social media since the game ended, I don't think people are cool. No one else is, or anyone else is cooled off, man.
Yeah, I mean, Bears fans are taking this hard, and it's hard anytime your team starts off 0-2. And I like that they were in that game. Of course, they gave themselves a chance, but yeah, I mean, it
I
did
don't
not go well.
see. I would even say like taking it hard infers that like there's a reason, like that there maybe you're taking it a little too hard. Like I think any opinion, as we kind of stated last week, you were looking for improvement, and Matt Eberflus afterwards talked about seeing improvement from week 1 to week 2, and it's like, well, of course you did. I mean, what you saw in week 1 was barely an NFL effort. In some cases, it wasn't an NFL effort, but I don't think you should feel any better after what we witnessed yesterday than you should after week 1, Sean.
Well, yeah, you're right, Kyle. It would have been hard to be worse than they were in week 1. I mean, it was sloppy. There were so many mistakes that were just things that you felt like they could clean up. And they began that process this week. It certainly wasn't perfect. There were still some issues on the offensive line. There were still some bad penalties here and there, but obviously we can get into the offense and why it's not working and all that. But sure, they made some strides, and I guess if you're Matt Eberflus, you can kind of hang your head on that. He mentioned that yesterday, but they have a long way to go. And Justin Fields said exactly that. We have a long way to go.
My good pal and frequent guest on the show might be Husky, Matt Tressman, Eberflus, fire everyone. They're not going to fire people, but like that's where we're at 2 weeks into the season. This is not just like social media. It's not just people on this show. It's widespread. Like I cannot believe the vibe around Chicago after 2 weeks, and it's completely justified. By the way, the season's not over. You know what I'm saying? Like I still believe there's talent on this roster, but holy crap, does this just everything that we've seen so far, Sean, just point to a train wreck unfolding?
I understand why people are concerned. I really do. You can't fire people now. It would be a huge mistake to do that. I mean, Justin Fields, whether you agree with what the offensive coordinator is doing or not, having more than one season with the offensive coordinator is going to be a lot more valuable than having to start over again.
You're not going to find, I don't think, anyone that agrees with what the offensive coordinator is doing right now. Luke Getsy again yesterday. I mean, let's dive into it, right? Let's start there. Which, by the way, thank you everyone who's watching live this afternoon. Almost said this morning. I'm used to this morning. Watching live this afternoon to Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast. You can catch us live on YouTube or any of Shaw Locals Facebook pages, whether that's the Northwest Herald, Herald News in Joliet, the DeKalb Daily Chronicle. And then, of course, you can download this if you're listening after, whether that's through iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. If you are watching on YouTube or watching this later, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. It helps other people find the channel, it helps it grow the channel. We really do appreciate that. But Sean, yeah, Luke Getsy, man. We're going to discuss the screenplays and all of that, but the very basic fact, or the what I've realized since this game ended and had a while to think about it, is my number one question, and the reason I think that we're in real trouble when talking about the Bears here is, what the hell happened to the zone read? You remember the zone read that was such a building block for this offense last year, that utilized Justin Fields' abilities to his strength to the best of his abilities. Where is it? Like it's disappeared. And the entire idea, I thought, coming into this was take what worked last year and build upon that, right? Which what you would do in any job, it's gone. And where the hell did it go, Sean?
I was right there with you, Kyle. I mean, you figured some stuff out last year. You learned what you could and couldn't do. You would think that they would take that and while you're still going to tinker with things, you're still going to try new things. You would think that would be sort of the base of what they're trying to do. I'm 2 weeks in. I am so surprised by the amount of shotgun we're seeing, the amount of just straight dropbacks, no play action, not getting Fields outside the pocket and not running him. He had 3 rushing yards yesterday, Kyle. This guy had 1,100 on the season last year. He had 3. That was his career low for a game he started. It matched his career low. Going back to his fun fact, the previous time he had only 3 rushing yards was his debut when he scored that touchdown against the Rams as a rookie.
3 rushing yards, man. That's indefensible. I mean, that's you have the most dynamic playmaker in the NFL at the quarterback position on your roster. You saw the upside last year. I mean, you saw it on the touchdown. Like, he got to the corner there, and Chase Claypool gave a better effort than week 1, but that's not saying a lot. He still was not great on that block, but it was enough to allow Justin to use his natural ability to get around the edge, and then it just went away again.
I cannot understand that. I know you don't want him to take as many hits as he did last year, and sure, maybe you don't want him to rush for 1,000 yards, but I don't know. He could still rush for 400 or 500, 600 in a season. You know, you still got to. That's like one of your most valuable weapons is Justin Fields running the football. I can't believe that they're just not. That was just not a part of the plan, and it doesn't seem like it was much at all in these first 2 games.
Yeah,
It seems to me, Kyle, like they're making a very concerted effort to give Justin the opportunity to read the whole field, to try to make throws downfield, and to try to see if he can play that style of quarterbacking. And the results haven't been there. And I mean, it's
that was last year. That's
right.
That was last year.
Well, ideally, it would have been. Yeah, I mean, this reminds me so much of the first 4 or 5 games last year.
Yeah,
which is weird.
Which
it's
again,
really weird.
That's why I'm saying, like, anyone like starting to have the Mark Trestman, those calls starting to come out. When we're having this conversation, that's why I'm saying, like, the Mark Trestman comparisons are completely valid. Like, we should not be having a conversation about how this offense looks like it did under the first 4 or 5 games of Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy last season. Like, that's unacceptable from a franchise, from any NFL franchise. It's incredible that we're at this point again with this team.
It is. Yeah. I mean, it's surprising. It's really surprising after the entire offseason and all the moves they made. I think everybody must have liked how they got DJ Moore more involved.
Still not enough.
Still not enough. He caught 2 passes on each of the touchdown drives. Those were your 2 best drives of the day, and it was largely because you were getting DJ Moore the football. I know he didn't score the touchdowns, but get him the football. Do it more.
Yes, I know. It's and I think he ended up with 7 targets. I mean, listen, it's going to vary from game to game, but at the end of the year, DJ Moore as a number 1 receiver, and this should go for pretty much any offense in the NFL in 2023. Like, your number 1 receiver should be averaging 9.5 to 12 targets a game. And obviously what we're talking 3 in week 1, including the interception at the end, 7 in week 2. That's not going to be enough. That's just not enough. And, you talk about the 2 touchdown drives, right? That's going back to the Luke Getsy stuff. Like, the first drive is scripted, but it's vertical. Mm-hmm. Next, that other drive, all right, we're down 10 points. We got to get vertical. We got to score quickly. Boom, right down the field. The other time, and it's just the other time, all right, I mean, what is going on? Like, how can that happen on 2 separate drives? And then you, for the second week in a row, come out with this game plan with the screens. And by the way, 2 weeks in a row, Equanimous St. Brown is inactive. So Velus Jones can play 4 offensive snaps yesterday.
Yeah, that was weird, and he didn't return any kicks. There were a couple there were a couple that weren't that deep into the end. I'm very curious to talk to Richard Hightower, the special teams coordinator, this week, because there were a few that Velus could have taken out and he didn't. So I wondered. I imagine that was the directive from the sideline: is we're not taking it out for whatever reason. I'm very curious about that decision as well, Kyle.
You're not taking it out, huh? Seems like that's a little bit a little counterintuitive to your hits philosophy there, right?
If Velus Jones is going to be active, you're putting him. You're doing that so he can return kicks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, at least give it a shot here. I know you might be 4 yards into the end zone, but take a shot on one of them.
No, where do you want to go from here, Sean?
Oh man, I mean, I don't know. There's just the I don't know what to make of Luke Getsy at this point, Kyle. I don't know. It's hard to know without being behind closed doors. It's hard to know whether the blame needs to be on the coordinator, whether it needs to be on the quarterback, whether it needs to be on the head coach. On some level, each of them have probably made mistakes in their respective jobs.
Let's talk Justin Fields yesterday.
Yeah.
But before we do, I want to make sure to get in a shout out to our sponsor for Shaw Locals Bears Insider podcast, Ken Nelson Auto Group. Proudly serving the Sauk Valley area for over 55 years, Ken Nelson Auto Group offers 10 new vehicle franchises in one convenient location right here in Dixon, Illinois. Shop a great selection of new and pre-owned vehicles at kennelsonauto.com. Yeah, Sean, there's no way to get around it. Justin Fields played very poorly yesterday, and we can talk about the coaching staff not putting him in position to make plays, or not putting him in the best position that time, and that is completely valid, right? But there's just no getting around the fact that at this point that Justin Fields is not playing very well.
Yeah, the drive right before their last drive of the second quarter, a little bit before halftime. It was maybe midway through this. It was midway through the second quarter, towards the end there. It was brutal. The protection was really good on a lot of those plays. Maybe it wasn't perfect the whole drive, but the plays that mattered, when there were third downs, when there were opportunities to throw the ball downfield, the protection was good. And he was just holding on to the football way too long, Kyle. It's as simple as that. I mean, he's holding on to the football way too long.
Sports Chicago style, Triple R checking in with us here. There were wide receivers open with time, but Justin Fields didn't rip it. Yeah, Triple R, Sports Chicago style. You are absolutely on it. We talked about it last week after the Packers game. You thought that you'd see a little more improvement from Justin Fields with time, going back through that film, that talking with the coaching staff. I think I'm not to the point where I'm saying I'm ready to panic on Justin Fields. There are concerns starting to creep in here, and but this is what makes it difficult, though, when we start the show with the coaching staff, because I still think that's a bigger issue than Justin Fields. But anyone who's become critical of Justin Fields, I think that is now appropriate.
Yeah, it's totally fair to be critical of Justin, especially for that drive that I was just talking about, and some of the decision making downfield, or some of the throws he's turned down, both this week and last week. That's totally fair. At the same time, and I know I'm being really negative here on our first 15 minutes or so here, Kyle, but
I think we're probably being about as positive as you could be after yesterday.
I know I sound negative, but I am 100% in the camp that you got to give all these guys more time to figure this out.
Yeah.
It's been 2 weeks, and good coaches, good coaching staffs make adjustments. We saw that last year when they changed the offense. Yeah, obviously you didn't want to have to be in a position where you got to figure some stuff out a few weeks into the season, but I do think at a certain point the Bears are gonna have to make some changes and do play to Justin Fields' strengths if they want to win football games.
Rick says, "How can't you panic? He is 5-27 as a starter, I believe." I'm not gonna. The record is one thing, right? But now that we're into year 3 and we're supposed to be coming out of the other side of this rebuild, it's not obviously not done. We knew that coming into this year, but one of the biggest takeaways from last year were how many games the Bears were in it at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that the Bears did not play well yesterday, despite the fact that the coaching staff did not put their team in positions to win, despite the fact that the defense could barely put a finger on Baker Mayfield, the Bears had the ball down 20-17 with a chance to tie or win the game. They even got a 1st and 5 coming out after the offsides penalty. And then you have a horrific pick 6 on a screen pass that apparently everyone in the stadium knew was coming. It sounds like Shaq Barrett clearly did. And I don't know.
I don't know if you saw Dan Orlovsky's tweet today, looking at the screenplay, Kyle, but he pointed out he played the play before it, which was almost the exact same screen, slightly different formation, but it was the exact same play 2 plays in a row. And so the second time you run that, I mean, Shaq Barrett was in the same spot both times. He sees what's happening in front of him and he reacts. He says, I just saw this. Yeah, I'm going to move back here. And, oh, hey, there's the football. Let's go score a touchdown.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good to be running that same, the same thing in a critical situation like that. And obviously that was the worst possible outcome.
I see a commenter, Bishop Cody Amel, is absolutely spamming the chat right now, telling us that it's not the quarterback, it's the offensive line. Bishop, one, I see it, man. Please stop spamming the chat. Two, it can be both of those things, and it certainly is both of those things. But listen, the Bears had 6 sacks or gave up 6 sacks yesterday. At least 4 of them were on Justin Fields. There's no doubt about it in my mind. It was not 4 of those are on Justin Fields. Braxton Jones got absolutely demolished off the line of scrimmage on one of them, and I want to say the other was Darnell Wright. I think got beat on.
Yeah, he got beat.
He got beat. So those are 2 you can put on the offensive line. The other 4 absolutely on Justin Fields. He's got to get rid of the ball quicker. That being said, the offensive line still, I mean, it's not good. I mean, Lucas Patrick, like the center play has not been good. You were without Nate Davis yesterday. Then Lucas Patrick goes out. You had Dan Feeney in there. Mm-hmm. Braxton Jones has been a disappointment through the first 2 weeks of the season after a really
tough couple weeks.
Yeah. Darnell Wright's been up and down. Bishop, Cody, it's absolutely the offensive line is struggling, and it is a major problem. That doesn't mean that Justin Fields isn't as equally as responsible for the struggles of the offense. There's plenty of blame to go around on this team right now.
I was talking, a couple of us were talking with Braxton Jones yesterday after the game, and I mean, he's
5 or 6 penalties in 2 weeks.
I'd have to go back and count. It's at least 5, I think.
Yeah.
He seemed genuinely miffed as to what exactly is going, like why he's off to such a bad start. I mean, he's a great talker, great interview, really, really thoughtful guy. It was one of those situations where like he didn't have the answers. He's like, I don't know. We got to get this. I gotta do better. And so he knows that, obviously. And this has been a rough start for him, especially after a pretty good rookie season last year. He was not perfect last year. He had his struggles in certain areas of his game. But he showed a lot more than you thought a 5th-round pick from an FCS school would show. And
yeah, and it wasn't, and you know what? It wasn't just the eye test. Like you looked at the analytics from multiple sources that produce that type of stuff nowadays, and they all pointed to him being above average, particularly for a rookie, not just a 5th-round rookie, but a rookie in general. He performed very well. And
yeah,
just not there.
and a note on that bad sack that he gave up. I was going back and rewatching the game, looking at the tape a little bit, and he had a false start penalty the play before where he jumped a second too early. They must have been on a count or something.
Yeah.
And the same guy lined up against him the very next snap. And I just wonder if it's a situation where he was trying to make sure he doesn't jump off sides, and the guy had that thing timed up really well and just beat him. I mean, it was no contest. It was like Braxton wasn't even there. You wonder if that penalty was in his head a little bit.
You wonder if a lot of things are in his head a little bit right now. Yeah. I want to see if we can go back here to Sports Chicago Style. He said in that situation, and he's talking about the pick six for Justin Fields on the screen pass. The Tampa Bay D was primed for the fake from that same formation and should have been beaten deep. I don't disagree, but actually the thought I had here, Triple R Sports Chicago Style, Sean, what happened to the Bears' run game yesterday? Because I thought it was really effective, and there just seemed to be no consistency with it. It just came and went randomly.
I think a large factor in that is that Bucs front. I mean, the Bucs are a really tough team to run the football against.
Yeah, but they did run it effectively when they attempted. That's
I don't know that I would agree with that. They had a couple nice plays. Roshan Johnson had a really big gain. I thought that play was all on Kari Blasingame, the fullback. I mean, that was a great block for him. But I mean, when you finish the game with 67 rushing yards, I don't know that you could call that very effective at all, Kyle.
Well, hold on. Now I'm trying to find the box score here. I want to look at this. Try and kill time here, guys. Yeah, 16. Yeah, but you're talking only 11 attempts for your running backs, and they combined for those 67 yards.
I think
7 carried for Khalil Herbert and 4 for Roshan Johnson. So 8 yards per carry for Roshan, 5 yards per carry for Khalil Herbert.
I do agree. That's a great point, Kyle. And on the rewatch too, that's one of the notes I wrote down. It's like, it's not just like, why isn't the running game working? But a bigger question, or the more pertinent question is why aren't they running the ball? And maybe that was just the flow of the game yesterday, but I don't know. I mean, it didn't seem like there was much of a commitment to run the football at all.
So this is where it comes down to a bigger issue, and it's through 2 weeks here, and there doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason for how these game plans are being developed, right? You can see this just from watching the games. There's very little flow to the play calling. Everything is disjointed right now, and that's that's part of the reason things look as bad as they do. The timing is off. Everyone, I mean, there was the broadcast. I don't know if you went back and watched the broadcast version of the game, but Daryl Johnson, I think, pointed out that I think it was Cole Kmet and DJ Moore. I could be wrong there, but at one point the Bears needed to pick up a first down, and they had 2 receivers run the same route within like 3 yards of each other.
Yeah, I did see that.
And it's just kind of a perfect encapsulation of just nothing looks like it's supposed to right now at any level.
And that's the thing. And you wonder, mistakes are going to happen. Guys are going to run the wrong route, especially early in the season when you're still kind of getting on the same page. But you wonder, that was a very obvious instance of it, Kyle. You wonder how much of that is less obvious going on too, that we don't maybe notice as much when, a guy's running the wrong route, or there's little, things are off, and it affects the whole play.
Kmet has also been boo-boo thus far this season. Sports Chicago Style says, yeah. Cole Kmet has got himself paid, and there are very few people on this team right now that I feel like you can say have played up to where our expectations are, and that's just relative to them. How many people right now do you feel are playing well on this team, Sean? Roshan Johnson, I feel like DJ Moore has acquitted himself well. Darnell Mooney, I actually think has done okay.
Yeah, Mooney's played well.
And
I guess Cody Whitehair, because you haven't noticed him making mistakes.
Yeah, I guess defensively, like TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds are racking up a bunch of tackles, but that's because the defensive line. Let's go over to the defense.
We gotta talk about this.
Yeah, we gotta, and I gotta get out of here a little bit early today, guys. In about 15 minutes or so. So I do want to make sure we get over to the defensive side. I mean, you're already shaking your head. They're bad. I mean,
if they don't get a pass rush, it's going to be like this all season. I don't know what else to say. Like, they can't get to the quarterback, and they had several opportunities to sack Baker Mayfield yesterday, and they just couldn't finish the deal.
No, and they actually got lucky that the score wasn't a little more lopsided because Baker Mayfield missed an absolute lunch bucket of a throw to Chris Godwin early in the game that should have been 7 points and ended up being 3. The Bucs kind of they kind of screwed the pooch on several different occasions there early in that game. That game should have been much more out of hand, I think.
Yeah, when the Bears scored that touchdown on their first drive, and then 6 possessions, the next 6 possessions they totaled 3 points. Yeah, a good team would put a team away in a situation like that. I was impressed with Baker Mayfield and the Bucs yesterday. Obviously, they still have some weapons for him to throw to, but I am certainly excited to see them play against a better defense down the line here.
I'll take my personal victory lap because that's what I was talking about on Friday, and it's like Baker Mayfield, former number 1 overall pick, gets into what I consider to be by far the best organizational structure he's been in. I don't think he's going to be great, but like, I like the coaching staff there. Like, I like the organization. I think he can be decent. He could be the next Geno Smith, Ryan Tannehill type guy, where he never lives up to that number 1 billion, but he ends up being a pretty good game manager and gets you to the playoffs. Not a bad career.
I mean, and maybe I shouldn't base things off what I saw the teams do against the Bears defense, but based on yesterday, I'm pretty impressed with what I saw from them. I mean, especially in that division, I think they're gonna, I think they're looking like one of the favorites to win that division.
Sports Chicago Style also saying number 29, referring to Tyreek Stevenson.
Yeah,
suffered that one push from Mike Evans, but he got lost in coverage a bit. Yeah,
Mike Evans got away with a push. Absolutely,
he did get away with the push on that. But with that being said, it was not a good day for Tyreek Stevenson. I'm thinking of the touchdown to Mike Evans. Was it second touchdown to Mike Evans? Did he have both of them? I think so.
Yeah.
The one, it was the left corner end zone or left side of the end zone. He came down between Tyreek Stevenson was in front. I want to say Jaquan Brisker was over the top on the back there. Was not a great look for the Bears secondary.
Yeah, somebody screwed up on that play. Probably Tyreek, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, look, cornerbacks are always going to look bad when they make mistakes. That's going to happen. I do think that on the play where Mike Evans pushed off, I think his safeties could have helped him a little bit more. Quindell Johnson, the number 26, who was in there playing for Eddie and Brisker, kind of overran that play a little bit. He was reacting to the throw, and then that's why Mike Evans cut to his right, and there was just nobody there because the safety had come all the way to the far sideline. I think that was maybe a little bit of a factor of having two safeties in there who weren't planning on being in the lineup.
Yeah, obviously Jaquan Brisker was dealing with dehydration yesterday. How bad was the weather down there, Sean?
It was very humid. It was muggy. I walked like a block or two from my Uber car to the press box or whatever, and I was sweating. It was hot.
One of those, yeah. You walk a block in the Florida heat, and you just need to change your shirt. Yeah.
That was definitely a factor too. I mean, we knew that would be a factor, and it absolutely was. It sounds like Jaquan was dealing with some cramps, dehydration issues, and props to him for coming back and playing in that second half.
I was recording the Friday Night Drive podcast before we jumped on this, so I don't know. Has Matt Eberflus, has he talked to you up today?
Yes, he did. Our guy Michael was tweeting a little bit. He did talk.
Did he give an update on Eddie Jackson?
No update on Eddie. Darnell Mooney was talking today and said he just had like a bone bruise or something in his knee, but that sounds like it's not really going to be an issue.
The Eddie Jackson thing is concerning because it's a foot
Very
injury,
concerning. Very
and
concerning.
he went through Liz Frank before, right?
That's what he had last year. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Liz Frank last year. I knew he had dealt with the Liz Frank injury at some point. I couldn't remember if it was last year or which year.
It seemed oddly similar in that, like, it was one of those plays where he was kind of in the play, but I don't know that he hit anybody, and it was weird. And then he comes up grabbing his foot, and you do feel bad and hope that it's not anything serious. But obviously he didn't come back and play anymore.
Yeah, Torian Whitfield checking Eddie aging before our eyes. It's incredible. It's incredibly unfortunate, I should say. Like when guys, you see this with certain guys, like when the injuries start to happen, they just seem to keep happening to them. And certainly hoping that we get good news on Eddie Jackson. But as Sean, you alluded to, anytime you have a foot injury, a guy that had a previous Liz Frank, it was the same kind of situation yesterday. I'm not feeling very hopeful, honestly.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Eberflus, it sounds like again today he reiterated what he said yesterday, where they think it's positive, moving in a positive direction, but I'm not going to really try to read into what he says because with the injuries, it's just at this point it's like a whatever. I kind of tune it out.
Rick Gonzalez has the question for you, Sean. Said, where was Pickens and Dexter?
Yeah, they weren't really noticeable, were they? They were on the field. Dexter was out there for almost half the snaps. Pickens was about 30%. But yeah, they weren't really making many plays, Kyle. And I mean, it's hard at that defensive tackle. It's kind of one of those spots where you don't notice a guy unless he's making a sack or something like that. But hopefully we just kind of keep seeing those two continue to get better and better, and maybe the snap count is going to go up. I would hope it's maybe a little bit higher, in November, December than it is right now. But they are still young players and they're still coming along. And I think it would really help that defensive line if those guys can turn out to be the studs that the Bears need them to be.
It doesn't help that, I don't know. I know we talked about it on Friday, a little bit about that Eagles-Vikings game, but watching the Bears defense unable to get any pressure and knowing that, I mean, I think back to us doing this podcast, the two of us and with Hub, before the draft, and all the talk about, or even before free agency, all the money they had to spend and how they had missed out on Larry Ogunjobi, and that they really needed to solidify the nose tackle, the three technique in this defense, that it's just so critical to the success to it. And they spent all that money at linebacker. And listen, they needed to upgrade the linebacker core. But then you saw the game on Thursday night too, and there's Jalen Carter just wrecking plays anytime he's on the field for the Eagles. And of course, like, we don't need to relitigate all that conversation, right, with the off-field stuff for Jalen Carter. But it doesn't leave you with a great feeling for where the Bears are at defensively and for this organization. And one thing before you, Joe Bisk, who is the managing editor, I'll give a shout out to Joe, for all of Shaw Local, a big Bears fan. And, he kind of was like, for people that, on the Jalen Carter, you can't bring him into the building, which I felt, honestly, I fell on that side. I think, Sean, you did too, right?
I did too, yeah.
Right. And Joe brings up a good point, though. If you want to be a winning organization, there are bad guys in every NFL locker room. If you want to be a winning organization, you have to have the people in charge that can handle NFL personalities. And if you don't have those people in there, if you say we can't do that, then you don't have the right people running your organization. Yeah,
I would agree with that. I do think that the makeup of the team matters too. I think the Eagles have a lot more teammates that a guy like Jalen Carter can lean on than you do here with the Bears. I mean, you got a couple of veterans on that defense. You brought in Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, but on that defensive line, I mean, if the Bears had drafted him, he'd be starting. He'd be playing a lot of snaps for you. There would be a lot. The expectations would be a lot different than maybe they are with the Eagles, where you have that solid base along the defensive line already, Kyle.
Yeah, everything you're saying is valid, but if he's going to continue to play at this level, and the Bears are going to continue to struggle, which let's not kid ourselves, even if they improve with the way they're playing right now, like I thought 7-10 to 10-7 was their range. I'm struggling to see this team getting anywhere past 7 wins right now. And if we're in for that type of a season with the Bears, with Jalen Carter playing well, and all the question marks already around this Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, it's going to get ugly here in Chicago pretty quickly. It already is.
Yeah, no, it is getting ugly. And obviously we got the Chiefs coming up this week, and that's probably not going to go well, Kyle. So you're probably looking at an 0-3 start here. I'm never going to have a problem with a team passing on a guy for character concerns. Like if you don't trust the guy, I'm fine with that, honestly.
That's fine, but except when you get it wrong. If you pass on them for character concerns, and then another organization, and again, it's 2 games, right? Like 3 years from now, this conversation could be very, very different. We don't know what's going to happen
Right.
with Jalen Carter.
Right.
But the concerns, at least early on, and it wasn't just the off-field stuff with the leaving the scene of an accident like that. It was how he showed up to his pro day. That was the other thing that was a real big thing. And to me, that was even more of a concern. It was the fact that after what happened, knowing that you had to show up and be responsible on the biggest day of your life, he still didn't show up ready to perform. That was the bigger thing to me than even what happened in that street race, right? Which I know that sounds terrible to say, but I'm talking from an NFL perspective, how you're trying to evaluate talent. And at least so far, I mean, the Eagles immediately getting production out of them, and those comparisons are just going to continue to take place. There's no avoiding them. The Bears aren't going to be the only team. I mean, before that news happened, right? A lot of people thought he was going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. On January 1st, if I had told you the Bears are going to have the number 1 pick and Jalen Carter is going to be available, it's coming out, everyone in Chicago would have been right on board. It would have been a slam dunk. They wouldn't even thought about trading the number 1 pick.
Yeah, I mean, look, 8 teams passed on him for a reason,
Not because of his. That's what I'm saying. Not because of his on-field play.
Right. It wasn't because of the tape.
Right. Yeah. Certainly wasn't because of the tape. Yeah. But so this is. I wish we could really. I'm a really positive guy, and I wish I could find a way to end this on a positive note. But this is where I think I'm at as I guess I almost said Bears fan. I did grow up as a Bears fan. And it's coming out in me a little bit, I think, here, because we've seen this for our entire lives if you've grown up in Chicago, right? But the thing was, it's kind of funny. I feel like at least I'm having this realization. You go back and you start thinking about where we're at now and these comparisons back to the Trestman era. And Sean, you recall the Ryan Poles introductory press conference going kind of awkwardly. Like he did not have a great intro press conference, and he ended up doing some radio hits that week to kind of solidify it. And, the thought was he's a young guy. With a lot of pressure. But then you start coming back to you start there in the first off season with the Ogunjobi stuff, and you start building out, and you look at the pro scouting side, and now you start going into the hits principles and this Chase Claypool nonsense to start a season and everything we've seen through 2 weeks. And you go back to, well, the process was the same when the Bears made an organizational change at the top. George McCaskey made that decision. George McCaskey talks about he's a football fan, and you go, oh man, did they do it again? Like, did they just, is this the same loop that we've been witnessing? And is Kevin Warren going to be the guy that finally says enough is enough?
Well, that's the big difference maker here. The big question mark is, You've got Kevin Warren in charge now. He's your president. He's your CEO. He has a football background. He's not making football decisions necessarily, at least in terms of who's playing and all that. But he knows this game. He knows what an ugly offense looks like. He's gonna be able to ask the right questions.
And he does not want this team to be the laughing stock of the NFL when he's trying to get a stadium built. That is, I know that is their, listen, we're at the end of the day, these are organizations, these are money making entities. We're talking lots of money. The Bears do not want to be a laughing stock when they're trying to get a stadium built. That's just the fact of the matter. And if that continues to trend this way, you have to think Kevin Warren, the Bears are going to be more aggressive than I think most teams would be if things go off the rails, is what I'm saying.
How so, Kyle? What do you mean by that?
I mean, I'm not saying that like Mike fire everyone earlier, right? I'm not saying that's coming 3 weeks from now. I'm not saying that's coming 8 weeks from now. I'm saying come December. Let's say they're at 3 or 4 wins heading into December, and you have major question marks about Justin Fields. I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin says, "All right, we're making changes. Let's go ahead and get this restarted." That's what I'm saying.
There's a world in which I can see that. At the same time, I do think they're going to want to give this time, and I just got to think they're going to pick up some wins, Kyle. I mean, the schedule has some favorable matchups coming up. I really don't see this as a team that's only going to win 3, 4, 5 games.
I
agree. I know it's been rough, but I agree with what you're saying. I mean, there's a world in which that scenario plays out.
There's also a world where they say, you know what, Justin, go do you. And they just start winning games, or they start losing games in very entertaining fashion. And all of a sudden everything seems right with the world. They win 5 games, but Justin Field looks good and, everything. But if they continue to struggle in every facet of the game, as they have through 2 weeks, like we talk about, there are a lot of winnable games right now. You look at the schedule, but you're like, okay, they can win that game. They can win that game. They can win that game. They can lose every one of those games that
literally week 1 and week 2, we're supposed to be on that list too as winnable games.
Right. Saving grace is every team in the NFC North lost this weekend. So at least the Bears didn't lose any ground there. So something to hang your hat on, right? I found a positive.
There's a positive. Hey, they're not out of it yet. We're 2 weeks in, and there's still hope.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got to get out of here, guys. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. We'll be back later this week. We'll preview that Chiefs Bears matchup. Hopefully be in a little better mindset here and a little more positive mindset, right, Sean?
Yeah. You know what? We'll be feeling good by Friday. That's 4 days down the line. There's going to be football coming up for the weekend. Maybe.
Oh, it doesn't really matter if I know there's a Bears game on Sunday. As long as I have a weekend of football, I'm going to be a happy man on Friday.
We're sad on Monday and Tuesday. There's no football.
All right. No, we got a doubleheader.
We got a doubleheader tonight. Yep.
I don't know if either of the game is really worth watching.
They're kind of yucky games, at least on paper.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
It's a chance to see Bryce Young, which
that's true.
On a Sunday I would never take the time to do. So that's at least a positive. So, but anyway, all right, guys, we got to get out of here. Thank you for watching. For Sean Hammond, I am Kyle Nabors. We'll talk to you guys later this week.